Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to an episode of The Nation Wants to Know, which we are recording after a very long time. And it is my absolute intent that in the new year 2024 and beyond, I shall be doing the Nation Wants to Know series of interviews once again. And I look forward to that very much, because I find the whole idea of going into a subject in depth with one person, questioning, interrogating, or learning from the course of that conversation, very personally, intellectually fulfilling and rewarding. So, ladies and gentlemen, the big event which everyone is looking forward to, every Indian is looking forward to, is the Ram Mandir Pran Pratishtha, the inauguration of the historic sacred Ram temple in Ayodhya, the birthplace of Bhagwan Shri Ram. Now, many people are looking at this event, which is going to happen on the 22nd of January, in terms of its political significance. And of course, there's a political significance. I'm not among those people who would assume that this is a non-political event. It is a political event because there was a political struggle which led to, the entire struggle which led to the building of a Ram temple, the political struggle which happened 1992, post 1992, even after that, the Supreme Court verdict, and now as we head towards the consecration of the temple. So there is a political struggle. But beyond the political struggle, for me personally, as a Hindu, it's also the high point of what people call Hindu revivalism, but which I would call a sense of pride in being a Hindu, accompanied with which is an awareness and regard for the Hindu civilizational heritage. India's civilization cannot be detached from Hindu civilization. Now, unfortunately, not everyone in the younger generation would understand the significance of the event, because they may not know the history of it. So one person who is joining us today is a living legend, of course, but there's nobody better than Mr. S. Gurumurthy, India's leading ideologue, historian. You can call him a political scientist, you can call him an economist, you can call him a strategic thinker, but there is nobody who has been witness to this battle of the Hindu community for the Ram temple as closely and in as much depth as Mr. Gurumurthy. And there is no one but Mr. Gurumurthy who can take us through the entire journey, the struggle and the hard-fought battle for Hindus to get to the point of the Ram Mandir Pran Pratishtha on the 22nd of January. So, Mr. Gurumurthy, thank you for taking our time to join us today. It's an absolute privilege. Very happy that we are having this conversation, and I think we should give enough time for this conversation. So, very delighted to have you with us, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Now,
thank you.
It's a delight to talk to you, because we get the freedom to talk, which was never available. It was always denied throughout my life. As a nationalist and as a proud Hindu, I always felt that there was something which was preventing the Hindus from expressing their true feelings as Hindus and as nationalists and as part of people in public discourse. I had the fortune of being associated with the Ramjan Bobu movement from the word go. It started in 1983, but there is a background to it. It is not that this movement originated on the basis of Hindu-Muslim relationship in post-independence India, but it happened long back. All this came out in the course of the exchange of documents between Hindus and Muslims as to how the Ram Janmabhoomi movement evolved from the 18th century, early part of the 18th century. And the British had recorded it. A British judge had recorded in 1886, when a suit was filed to take possession of the Ram Janmabhoomi. He recorded that it is unfortunate that a Hindu temple was demolished and a mosque has been built on its place. But it is very difficult for me, after this length of time, to hand over the premises to the Hindus. This was the helplessness of a government with the judicial system, which had very limited scope to intervene in these matters. But the historicity of this was established by series of struggles which the Hindus undertook by way of military expedition, by way of war diplomacy, and it all every time there was some physical clash. The last was in 1934, when several hundreds of Hindus were killed, according to the British records. So the Hindus have been struggling for it on the basis of their continuous belief and the claiming the right to worship. This would have normally happened immediately after the country attained freedom, like it happened in the case of Somnath. It should have happened instantly. But the idea was to deny the Hindus their just and lawful claims to the three masjids. You know, it is not that the government was unaware, the political system was unaware, or the judiciary was unaware. Anyone with basic understanding of historic and civilizational forces, how they can, like a wave, again and again come and manifest, will have to only look at what Arnold Toynbee told the Indians in India in the Abul Kalam Azad Memorial Lecture in 1956. He made 3 points. He said that the three masjids are an ocular provocation because they were not built as religious symbols, but as symbols of conquest and domination of Hindus by Muslims. This should be removed. That is what he meant. And he said that you have not removed it, means that you are very large-hearted or something, but he paid a left-handed compliment. But he quoted a historic instance of the Polish government removing the Russian cathedral, which was built at the center of Warsaw by the Russians in 1619. Exactly 300 years later, when Poland got back its freedom at the end of the First World War, the first thing the Polish government did was to officially announce the demolition of the Russian cathedral. Even gave running commentary over a radio that this being demolished, and a Roman Catholic church was built in place of it. Toynbee said this was the best way of removing the remnants of Russian domination. What he meant was India should have done that. And he even advised the British. He said, if I were advising the British, I will advise them to tell the Indian government to remove the remnants of colonial administration, because that would interfere between the good relations of India and England. You know, this is how the historic forces keep the memory going. Despite that, there was an attempt to erase history, and even to say that there was no temple at all, there was no Rama, and Babur was a secular person. And you know, this was so far as the Ram temple was concerned. The most pervasive lies were told after 1976, when Mrs. Gandhi appointed a commission. Mrs. Indira Gandhi appointed a committee of archaeologists headed by Bibilal, who found that there was a temple standing on which the mosque stands. After all this, the Hindu claim was denied, deferred, delayed by the judiciary, by the government. This was on the one hand. And what was happening in politics? You know, Aligarh Muslim University was declared as not a minority institution by the Supreme Court. It was reversed by law. And some happening takes place in Alaska Mosque. and Bhutto is hanged. And here you see huge riots, which have nothing to do with India. The right to riot, to express their feelings, was accepted as part of minority rights in India. And then Shabano case was reversed. And see these series of appeasement of minorities built up a very powerful and strong base for the Hindus to unite in the name of Rama. Rama became the symbol by which the Hindus united. And in 1983, the movement was launched. And the movement spread like wildfire. It is not that the BJP launched the movement. The BJP entered the movement 6 years later in June 1989. It was in Palampur they decided that Ram Temple movement, the BJP will participate in the Ram Temple movement. Afterwards, all other political parties opposed it. Tell me, between 1983 and 1989, there was no politics associated with the Ram Temple movement. Ram Temple movement was not spearheaded or participated by the BJP. It was a movement of the Hindu sons and saints. And this was a continuation of 250 years efforts. Which political party took a decision on that to either oppose or support? But when BJP supported, all others began opposing. This is how the polarization took place. And I will stop at this point as to how a cultural, religious, and just movement of the Hindus to rebuild Ram Temple at the place at which it was demolished and the mosque was built was converted into a political movement by pseudo-secular politics.
So two very important things come up here. I have two questions, if you can. See, you gave the Russia-Poland example after the first Russian occupation of Warsaw, wherein the Russians had built a Eastern Orthodox, I think, Christian cathedral on the very spot where there was a Roman Catholic Christian country, Poland. Now, when the Poles got independence, they brought down the Russian church because it was not an example of religion. It was an example of foreign imposition. But in India, when Aurangzeb brings down a temple or Babur brings out a temple, it is not looked at as a foreign invader's imposition. It is looked directly as a Hindu versus Muslim issue and given the garb of secularism. Secondly, the story is told that Hindus will lose their character if they don't start becoming tolerant of these episodes. We are told the essence of Hindu religion is tolerance, including the tolerance of injustice. And the more tolerant you are of injustice, the better a Hindu that you are. So, in a way, isn't there an attempt at Hindu villainization? There are three phases of this struggle. From the Maratha operation, there was a definite policy on sacred places, including Kashi, Ayodhya, Prayag. In the legal battle was the second phase, right? And this, the legal efforts start in 1885. And the third phase was the 1983 onwards movement of the sadhus and sons and the political movement after 1989-90. So there are 3 or 4 phases of this struggle. And Hindus were patient throughout, Mr. Gurumurthy, you will agree with me. Till 6th of December 1992, Hindus were patient. Then the Babri Masjid were demolished and Hindus were patient again after that in the Supreme Court case. So, was there an attempt to frustrate, trigger and agitate the Hindus and villainize the Hindus? Anyone associated with this?
You see, by Nehruvian secularism, Hindus had become political, cultural, religious orphans in this country. Because Nehru himself said, Islamic or Muslim communalism is aggressive, but Hindu communalism is dangerous. Imagine the tallest leader of the country and the most respected Indian leader abroad pronouncing that Hindu communalism is dangerous. You know, this is how the division between Hindus and Muslims started. He should have remained above this. But he found it was necessary to cultivate the Islamic vote bank for Congress. And that is how he seeded the idea that to be against Hindus is part of Indian secularism. And this remanifested.
And you're just sorry to intervene, but Nehru was always very prickly. When Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was the Deputy Prime Minister and Home Minister of India, in November 1947, he went to Saurashtra and declared at a public meeting that the first step of the government of India will be to reconstruct Somnath and reinstall the Jyotirling. As soon as Vallabhbhai Patel passed away, Nehru could not tolerate his cabinet colleague K.M. Munshi taking part in the Somnath temple reconstruction, right? Or for the installation of the deity at the Somnath temple. So I think Nehru, in the name of secularism, wanted India to detach itself from its Hindu roots.
You see, Jawaharlal Nehru's tolerance of Hinduism vanished after Sardar Patel. He politically tolerated Hinduism because Mahatma Gandhi proclaimed Swaraj as Ramarajya. So he could not say anything which would go against either Mahatma Gandhi or Sardar Patel. And he was, according to me, a fake secularist who did not want Hinduism in India. I am very clear about it. Everything related to the Hindus, he only scorned. And that translated into the secular exposition and secular narrative of India. And all this had reached a fruition. When the Punjab movement came, Mrs. Gandhi did not know where to look for support. And she went for a soft Hindu nationalist approach. Otherwise, she felt the country was in danger.
Yeah.
And that attitude was political. But we don't want a Hindu nationalist upsurge in India to be founded only on politics. Politics is a fleeting phenomenon. It has to be more profoundly and deeply rooted. And that is why Rama became the symbol of that. And you know, the turn that occurred after 1983 in Indian politics, unless it is studied in depth by the political analysts, historians and politicians and political parties and even the judiciary in detail, they cannot understand what is the basis of Hindu Indian nationalism. You know, all this was accepted as part of the freedom movement in 1935, and Jawaharlal Nehru wrote the Glimpses of World History. He wrote in page, if I remember right, at page 802, that you can't draw a line between Hindu nationalism and Indian nationalism because India is the only country of Hindus. And Swami Vivekananda, who expounded the Hindu nationalism, was not against anybody. His concept of Hindu nationalism was not against anybody. You understand?
I do.
This idea of Hindu as equal to Indian nationalism was completely removed from the Indian discourse.
I totally with you.
Came out with his declaration of claim for Pakistan,
but
and that continued. So Ram Janmabhoomi acted as the corrective to this secular, pseudo-secular discourse. And how it happened can be explained in stages. How there was a struggle.
I will.
I'm coming to that.
No, I'm coming to that.
Between nationalism.
No, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. The point I'm trying to make, Mr. Gurumurthy, is that your generation and to some extent my generation, we know, your generation knows a lot more, my generation knows a little less about the truth of what happened during and in the lead up to the Babri Masjid demolition. My concern is, Mr. Gurumurthy, the generation younger to me, right, the cellular phone generation does not know enough about what happened. And there is the attempt to always portray Hindus as the aggressors. Even today before the Pran Pratishtha, people are writing articles saying, don't take part, Hindus are the aggressors, Hindus have done injustice. And in today's social media age, where everything you consume on these apps becomes some kind of a gospel truth, there is an amnesia towards the active machinery that was at work to frustrate, trigger, and agitate the Hindus. I hold a view, Mr. Gurumurthy, that the Hindus were very patient. And I just want to share with you a little bit for our viewers the specifics of the struggle and then get you to comment on it. So I want you to take you back to 1992, Mr. Gurumurthy, to a moment of absolute betrayal in my view. If you look at the timeline, on 22nd July 1992, the Supreme Court had said it will consolidate the cases and refer the issue to whether a mandir can be constructed to a larger bench for day-to-day hearings if the UP government agrees to stop the construction. Then Advani and Vajpayee nudged the Prime Minister and said, meet the sadhus and the sons. The next day, the Prime Minister meets the sons through a one-on-one dialogue. Due to the Prime Minister's appeal, they agree to stop the construction so that the dispute can be resolved in a time-bound manner. No less than the then Prime Minister assures Ashok Singhal of the VHP that he will take personal interest and solve the problem in 3 months. The very next day, VHP stops the construction but says, if it is not resolved, we'll start again in October or November 1992. Then the Prime Minister changes the track. He withholds the talk of a 3-month deadline drawn when he speaks to the Lok Sabha. In his statement to the Lok Sabha, the Prime Minister does not speak one word on removing the hindrances in the way of the Kar Seva. And then, an icing on the cake of the insult to the Hindu sons, the Supreme Court also in August drops the offer to transfer the cases that it had indicated in July. So, if you look at the sum total, Hindus are being told, you will have your temple, we will find a way, we will resolve this. Then both the Supreme Court and the Prime Minister look in the other direction. So, I feel that Hindus were betrayed. Hindus were not the aggressors in the run-up to 1992. Am I right in my view that the run-up of events to 1992, even the last few months, Hindus were betrayed? And this led to a massive amount of instigation. Is my perspective correct on this?
I will explain it in 3 ways. One, the Hindus always suffered from what Karl Popper says as the paradox of tolerance. Tolerating the intolerance to the point of the tolerance itself being extinguished is the paradox of tolerance, which Karl Popper envisaged as early as 1945 for the liberal societies. The most liberal religion, the most liberal culture, the most liberal nation has been facing this paradox of tolerance for almost a millennium. So you must understand, the Hindus always felt that if they did something, they would be called intolerant by the intolerant people. So this is the source of the wrong discourse that manifested against Hindus and in favor of pseudo-secular politics. So you must understand, this is the philosophical foundation of pseudo-secularism, to make the Hindus feel guilty that they should not be called intolerant, that others are intolerant and it is their business to be intolerant, and it is for you to tolerate that intolerance was the foundation of Indian secularism. This point one. Second, you must trace 3 events by which the 1992 demolition occurred. In 1989, the Shilanyas was announced, and Rajiv Gandhi government was carrying on a back-to-back conversation, dialogue with Muslims and the Hindus. And there Bhutta Singh was sent to negotiate with the Hindu saints that Shilanyas would be allowed. And Shilanyas was allowed. And Rajiv Gandhi began the 1989 poll battle in Ayodhya on the slogan of Ramarajya, because Ram Janmabhoomi movement had become so powerful, so pervasive, and cutting across all differences among the Hindus, that Congress did not want to lose the spirit of the Ram Temple movement to counter the Bofors allegation against Rajiv Gandhi. Is this not politics? Okay. Then after the Shilanyas occurred, then came the VP Singh government, which is of which I am one of the persons who could claim to be part of bringing it into being on behalf of the Indian Express. The Indian Express team worked to bring VP Singh into power. When he came, we thought he would take steps to resolve the problem. But he complicated it because his identity with the separatist Muslim sentiments was far stronger than the attachment of the Congress with them. With the result, Advani had to commence the Rath Yatra, which was the high point of the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. I was involved in the negotiations at the time in the month of October when Arun Jaitley and me suggested that a law be passed to acquire the 31 cents of land on which the disputed structure stands and keep exit and entry for that and leave the remaining places which had been acquired by the Ram Janmabhoomi Trust through the UP government for them to commence construction and let this, whether there was a masjid or mosque, let it be decided by the Supreme Court by a reference for opinion under the Constitution. Then there was a discussion in which Goswami, who was the law minister, Arun Nehru, George Fernandez, myself, Govindacharya, Arun Jaitley participated, where they said there are 900 suits. How to refer for legal opinion? I said there is only one issue in that suit, who the title to the land belongs. That can be referred for legal opinion. It was accepted at 11:30 in the night. R. Venkatraman was spoken up and this ordinance was issued. But at 3:30 in the morning, Mulayam Singh went and woke up VP Singh and said, I will pull your government down unless you withdraw the ordinance. At 4 o'clock in the morning, VC Pandey rang me up and said that the ordinance is being withdrawn. Please do something about it. 6 o'clock, I meet VP Singh. The ordinance is withdrawn. And Advani was arrested on that day. Can you believe that a government which took a decision to stop the movement getting escalated was forced on withdrawal mode by one man, only for Muslim votes? Is the second point. The third is the steps that Chandrasekhar government took. The most positive steps were taken by Chandrasekhar, who brought both sides and kept Sharad Pawar on the one side and Bhairav Singh Shekhawat on the other and asked them to produce evidence. And they both sides produced evidence which proved that there was a temple which was demolished and mosque was constructed. The Muslims said, no, that is British period evidence. The British wanted to divide the Hindus and Muslims, and so they created it. We want pre-British evidence. 7 pre-British evidence of the Christian missionaries were produced to show that they knew that there was a temple which was demolished and a mosque was built. They said, no. We want an Islamic period reference. That the Muslims say, yes, we demolished it. It was at that point, the entire documentation was secreted. The government did not release it because Chandrasekhar lost hope that it could be done. But Bhairav Singh Shekhawat gave me all these documents. We put it in the BJP white paper. If there is any true account of what happened till 1992, December 6th, it is the BJP white paper, which was very professionally done. And if I remember right, the Hindustan Times, comparing the government white paper and the BJP white paper, said that the BJP white paper is far more credible on facts than the government white paper. How? By prevarication, by delaying, by testing the patience, by making the emotive Hindus feel angry and upset. And when the Supreme Court said, no, you can do Karseva, but you cannot use any construction equipments, the opposition said, are you going to do puja? 3 lakh people had assembled for Karseva and they were made into a laughing stock. And do you mean to say the ordinary Hindu will be able to maintain his patience and poise like a saint? They exploded. That is how 6th December took place. 6th December was an invitation. And you look at it in the background of what K.K. Muhammad, who was part of the 1976 excavation, wrote in his I Am Also Indian book in Malayalam, where he said, in 1990, the Muslims were willing to give up the Ram Janmabhoomi to the Hindus. The Marxist historians said, don't do it. Even the existence of Rama is in doubt. He was born in Iran, if he was ever born. And don't do it. They prevented them. This is what resulted in 6th December. And thereafter, it became a legal dispute and inevitably a political dispute rooted into the Indian politics. It could never be said that Ram movement was originally political. It was turned into political movement in 4 stages. And finally, the demolition settled that it cannot be taken out of political discourse. And then came the constitutional decision on the Ram Janmabhoomi. First,
what you have just said,
and then
what you have just.
This is the development.
I just want to share one thing before I lose the flow of this. It is so fascinating what you've just told me, and on a personal note, can I share something with you? Can I share something with you on a personal note on this, Mr. Gurumurthy?
Please.
The person you mentioned as the Law Minister of India to whom you and Arun Jaitley were explaining the need for an ordinance is my own uncle. And I find this account very interesting, where you sat with my uncle and explained to him the need to issue the ordinance, and my uncle said that because of the multiplicity of issues involved, it was not possible to issue that ordinance. At that time, sir, I was a first-year student in Delhi University, and I wish I could have been witness to that conversation. But it gives me goosebumps today when I hear you recount the whole thing, and also gives me goosebumps to believe that you convinced my uncle of the need to issue the ordinance, but because of political reasons and pressure from Mulayam Singh Yadav, it could not go through. So I was getting goosebumps as you explained that, because what is coming across to me was that it was so easy to solve the issue if one had the political will. There would have been no problem. There would have been no demolition, nothing after that. The matter could have been peacefully resolved.
I must add here, the same ordinance was issued by Narasimha Rao with a little modification here and there in 1993. It was on the basis of that ordinance, sans the need for opinion by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, instead of our opinion, the judiciary will determine whether there was a temple or mosque and whether the place belongs to the Hindus or not. Otherwise, the entire suggestion that was made in 1990 became the solution for Ram Janmabhoomi later. To that extent, I can feel proud that we could conceive of a solution to avoid a catastrophe which pseudo-secularism imposed on India.
So my next question to you was that, constantly Narasimha Rao, when he was Prime Minister, kept referring to the disputed structure as a mosque. Now, as Prime Minister, he should have known that you refer to a disputed structure as a disputed structure. If a Prime Minister of the country says it is a mosque, it seems that the government of India, the Congress government, had decided it was a mosque. So was that also an attempt to instigate? He kept saying, even in his statement to the Lok Sabha, he says it's a mosque. On 15th of August 1992, he says we want a temple, but the mosque must not be broken. He keeps referring to it as a mosque. What was the intent there?
See, it was always referred to as the disputed structure. It was never referred to as mosque till Narasimha Rao said there is a mosque. And then this whole clash of temple versus mosque was built. Muslims versus Hindu was built. Secularism versus nationalism was built. Around that fake theory, it was a mosque. That it was never in use after 1934. And suddenly it became into use in 1947-48. And it again went into disuse all this was completely kept away. And shockingly, the government white paper, which was brought out on the demolition, began referring to the so-called mosque as disputed structure after having done the job. The job was done by telling the whole world that a mosque was demolished. But afterwards, the government came back to the original narrative that it was a disputed structure in its white paper and said it was a disputed structure, and the word mosque was never found in the government white paper at all. And even in S.B. Chavan's statement in the parliament, he referred to it only as disputed structure. So you can understand politics that was being played at that time.
I find another question.
Aroused.
No, but it is the politics of that time. The politics of that time.
Muslims were aroused by the government telling it is a mosque.
No, all politicians. I was in college at that time, Mr. Gurumurthy, and I remember that every politician was going hard to get the Muslim vote bank. When the car sevaks were fired upon by Mulayam Singh Yadav in 1990, and we did a sting operation on a police officer who was then SHO of the Ram Janmabhoomi Thana. He said that the massacre was of countless Hindus, not just 16 people. And he said many car sevaks were given a burial. He said in Hindi, unko dafnaya gaya. The car sevaks were denied a cremation. This reality was also buried. Mulayam Singh Yadav, in order to pander to the Muslim vote bank, started saying that we had to teach these car sevaks the meaning of law. How dare they try to break the masjid? If more people were required to be killed, then the security forces could have done it. So, was Mulayam Singh Yadav competing with the Congress by this time for the Muslim vote bank? And was Narasimha Rao referring to it as a mosque also to pander to the Muslim vote bank?
You see, Mulayam Singh Yadav became the face of Islamic politics in 1990. And he very clearly said that I will not allow Karseva to go on. Not a crow will fly over Ayodhya. And till 10 o'clock, the entire area was sealed off. But by 10:30, 11, thousands of Karsevaks had walked towards that place. And Ashok Shingal, who had gone there on a motorcycle, was hit on his head by a stone. And he became unconscious. The movement was leaderless. Still, the Karsevaks performed the Karseva and many were killed. People say it is the BJP which did it. People say it is the Vishwa Hindu Parishad which did it. It is actually the collective conscience of the Karsevaks who believed in Rama. They did it. They had nothing against anybody. They had nothing against Islam. They only wanted a temple for Rama. Unless you go into that spirit of the Karsevaks, you cannot understand why the Ram Janmabhoomi movement began transforming, paradigm shifting Indian polity. It could not have been done as a top-down movement. It was a bottom-upwards movement. Because Rama resides in the conscience of the people of India, of women, of families, of communities, cutting across castes. Will you believe the Hindu society, which is supposed to be based on Varna Dharma and caste, oppression of the scheduled caste, the first person to lay stone for the construction of Ram temple was a Harijan from Bihar. You can understand that the Hindu society had become one. The sincere saints were there. When an untouchable, quote unquote untouchable, went and planted the first stone for construction of the Ram temple. Do you mean to say it's a communal movement? It was a caste-based movement. It was a political movement. Even today, unless you go into the roots of what constitutes the Hindu consciousness of India represented by Ram, you can never understand the idea of India. You cannot reject Ram, Ramayana, the entire past, the Vedas, the Upanishads. and construct an Indian narrative. And when Vedas are considered by great Nobel laureates as having answers for modern scientific problems, you reject Vedas as imaginary. You said Vedas did not exist because Saraswati River did not exist. Saraswati River is found to exist, but still Vedas are mere poems. Can poems contain scientific truths? Does anyone look at the Indian narrative with a helicopter view that this is an undated civilization, there's a continuity, and that is what constitutes India? Otherwise, 900 languages, countless number of castes, varying if you put India on the one side and the rest of the world on the other, you see more diversity here than the rest of the world put together. How do you find unity in diversity in India minus Ram, minus our traditions, minus our value systems, minus our mutual tolerance? This is the Indianness which Ram Temple movement reinstated in Indian national life, and it also manifested in politics. You cannot say that the national life will have a core idea which will not be represented in politics. Politics is a mirror of national life. So the entire fake narrative started after 1940, rooted in the partition movement and strengthened by Nehruvian secularism, pandered by the vote bank politics, was demolished on 6th December 1992. In fact, my friend Arun Shuri described that as the first Islamic act of the Hindus.
So the interesting, it's an interesting description. So you would say today, if I were to ask you, that the Hindu community should not feel guilty about 6th December 1992?
Not at all. It is the seculars, pseudo-seculars, the prevaricating government, the converging people who denied the Hindus their just lawful claim, which has been settled by the Supreme Court. The first suit was initiated in 1885. The next suit was initiated in 1950. The Supreme Court decided it as late as 4 years ago. And what the Supreme Court settled was always the fact. And it was a unanimous decision. And the Supreme Court found that there was a temple on which the mosque had been built. It only did not say whether the temple was demolished and mosque was built, that there was a religious structure and on that the mosque stands. This was always the claim of the Hindus, who denied it, prevaricated it, made the Hindus lose their thousands of years of tolerance and restraint at the mass level. You know, when the Karsevaks were rushing to demolish the temple, you can see in the video, Ashok Shingal was trying to prevent them. All the leaders were trying to prevent them. They said, we have no patience anymore. We have no patience in you.
But
we have no patience in the system.
So there's a question I have here. There is an anti-Hindu narrative that was built in our country, and today for the first time Hindus are questioning and saying it, we are not the villains. I am asking you whether Hindus should feel guilty about 6th December 1992. You are saying no. The Hindus were patient for a long time. Now there is a question I have. Was the structure which was demolished a mosque at all? Is the question. A controversial question, but it must be asked. Because the Prime Minister Narasimha Rao said in his speech that was telecast on Doordarshan on the night of 6th December 1992 that what was demolished was a mosque. Whereas, on the contrary, the white paper issued by the Government of India, on the very first page of that white paper admits, and I quote, that in effect, from December 1949 till 6th December 1992, that whole structure had never been used as a mosque. So by that logic, that structure was not a mosque. But we keep talking about the demolition of a masjid. And the Congress kept saying that what was demolished was a mosque, whereas their own white paper says it was not used for almost half a century as a mosque. So why was it referred to constantly as a mosque? Why did Congress say what was demolished was a mosque, and because of this the RSS has to be banned, etc.?
No, it's not just ban on RSS is a very incidental aspect of it, because RSS was banned only in 1948 and then in 1975 RSS is used to ban, and the ban has had no impact at all on the RSS because the RSS is rooted in the basic values and truth of India, whether you accept it or not. Otherwise, an organization cannot withstand this kind of might of great leaders and political forces and the entire politics converging against them. There is a spirit. So RSS ban is a very small part of the whole thing. But what is important is that the attempt to turn the disputed structure into a mosque is to demonize the Hindus, not only in India, not only in Muslim mind, not only in the secular people, truly secular people mind, but all over the world. Once and for all, the Hindus must be shown to be the first persons in modern world to demolish a religious structure of another religious group. This was the idea. This is a conspiracy.
Yeah.
And this is kept alive even today by the liberals of India because they have no other business. If they accept it was a disputed structure, they will have to swallow all the vomit that they had made in the past. My view is, I was closely following the movement. It would have been shocking if the Hindus had not demolished the mosque.
Sir, in the present context, have one last question for you, and I have really enjoyed the vast spread which you have given in the course of this conversation. So there is a panic among the opposition parties today that this will benefit Narendra Modi. He was anyway winning, he has won the state elections, and now, this is going to benefit the BJP. You have Uddhav Sena coming and politicizing it. You have communists saying we will not attend. This is politicization. What is your view on the politics around the Ram Temple inauguration and the likely impact of the Ram Temple inauguration on politics in the country?
You see, the opposition should have accepted the fact of Ram Temple and the just cause of the Hindus with the declaration by the Supreme Court that a temple existed. I'm sorry. But they didn't allow the matters to rest there. If they had accepted, then this division wouldn't have been there. The temple would not have been identified with Narendra Modi or the BJP government. Sorry. But they have revived the whole debate again by making Ram Temple inauguration as a political issue, completely throwing the issue back to 1990s. And it is suicidal for them because the country's politics has paradigm shifted. Pseudo-secular politics will never be practical hereafter. It is not possible to do a Malappuram district today. The country has changed. Opposition has not changed. Their mindset is stale. They are handing over they are handing over the entire success of the Karsevaks to a political system. It should be part of the national celebration. It is a very wrong mindset, even political strategy for the opposition parties to dissent, oppose, and not own the Ram Temple.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Gurumurthy, I think that in the course of the build-up of the coverage to 22nd of January, it is very important that the public at large know the nuances of what led to 1992 and what happened thereafter. We at Republic believe that this is a legitimate victory of the Hindu community, and I personally believe that it is a high point as far as Hindu civilization is concerned, and Hinduism is a religion followed by over 1 billion Indians, so we need to participate in that. Mr. Gurumurthy, I thank you for today's conversation, and I look forward to having many more conversations with you in the run-up to 22nd. I thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Gurumurthy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.